mega deal in Denver. What is next for the rising star, and what kind of risk did the Broncos inherit once pen hit paper? So, plenty of follow-up questions on this, all right? The framework of the contract, all right, 4 years, $120 million. The base value of the deal is $106 million. There is 70 guaranteed. That makes Nik Bonitto the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of this illustrious franchise we know as the Denver Broncos. Pretty cool, man, just for him to be able to own that label is pretty freaking cool, man.
Top 10. In your craft, you are not. It's not just enough that you made it to the NFL, where the 1% of the 1% of the 1% who want to play football end up making it. But then within that one of one, you are one of the 10 highest paid in terms of valued by their organization in the entire league.
Yeah, that's incredible. But that's, and I know I mentioned it, but that speaks to the awareness level of Bonito. You're not trying to reset the market. You're not in the top 5. You're in the top 10, but you're 10. And so, to be able to boast, I have the largest contract in the history of a non-quarterback here in Denver is just pretty cool. If you're drafting the Denver Broncos, we've done this segment for a few years in a row where, and we actually didn't do it this offseason, but Phil and I remember a year ago in the offseason, we drafted the Broncos. You get 5 picks, I get 5 picks. We flip for, there's no quarterback, so obviously because it'd be tilted roster-wise. Yes. So you flip for the first pick and da-da-da. Take Bo out of it. If we're doing the same exercise, what pick is Nik Bonitto for the Denver Broncos?
For me, if I'm shooting from the hip right now, he's probably, I think the ceiling
if you want to talk through it.
Number one, if I have the number one overall pick, if I win the coin toss, I think I'm taking Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, fair.
Reigning defensive player of the year, lockdown corner, one of the 10 best players in the NFL, voted on by his peers, and somebody who you also got contract-wise on a pretty good bargain.
Incredible.
So he's number one for me. And it sounds like you might co-sign that.
Absolutely. Pat Surtain would be the top pick. Take Bo out of it, he would be number 1.
Number 2 is where I really think Nik Bonitto starts to enter the conversation. You can say maybe Zach Allen
definitely
is in that conversation. You could say, I'm trying to think on the offensive side of the ball, if you really value
left tackle and
I was going to say
a
Garrett Bowles. Quinn Miners is a standout interior offensive lineman, but the position there really makes it hard to spend top-tier draft capital in this hypothetical draft.
You speak for the both of us there. Great player, but positional value matters when you're having this conversation.
Even with some of the stud acquisitions they brought in free agency and in the draft, there's just too much uncertainty there to reach that high for some of the promise that I think is there.
Yep.
And again, Marvin Mims, all-pro on special teams, but still remains to be seen whether or not he's an every-down route runner and true number 2 wide receiver. So for me, it's between Bonitto and Zach Allen. And I want to say, as a quick tiebreaker, that edge rusher with the importance of that position, locking him in at a young age and somebody that you can, have as a cornerstone for maybe a decade, Nik Bonitto might be number 2 in my draft. And I can live with maybe overreaching by 1 round because I wouldn't draft him lower than 3rd.
Yep, that's where I'm at. I think I value, oh, God. I'm going back and forth between Allen and Bonitto. I think they're in the same class of player, but it's what do you value more? A push from the middle of your defense that is really, really, really hard to find. Really hard to find a player like Zach Allen. I think it's actually, and this is going to sound nuts, but I think it's actually easier to find a Bonitto than it is a Zach Allen. And I think you could look at the opposite side of Bonitto. There's a double-digit sack artist in Jonathan Cooper as well. Yep. But when you get a push from the interior defensive line and your quarterback has no room to step up into, that is a dangerous, dangerous thing to have. Obviously, Aaron Donald comes to mind, being the most notable.
Dexter Lawrence with the Giants, they had an interior defensive lineman that was just a game wrecker.
Yep. He's in there.
Because, again, and we kind of alluded to it earlier, what you force an opposing offense to have to do from a protection standpoint, and I hear Mark Schlereth talk about it ad nauseum as we're going through the Broncos evaluations, to have somebody in the middle like an Aaron Donald or like a Zach Allen that is just such a brute force that you have to divert extra attention from the Quinn Minerses and the Ben Powers of the world to try to prevent. The quickest path to anything is a straight line.
Right.
And that's what a player like Zach Allen and those guys have. So if you're giving up leaks right up the middle, Nik Bonitto and Jonathan Cooper don't even have time to get to the pass rusher before he's impacted. So I fully co-sign that. The impact that a guy in the middle can have like that doesn't get as much love and as much rub, but can't be understated when it's at its highest level.
No. So I go back and forth. At the end of the day, if I was drafting the Broncos roster after Pat Surtain, I would probably take Zach Allen followed by Nik Bonitto. But I don't think there's a scenario.
I'd be happy with whichever one you took. I'd be happy the other one fell to me.
Right. It's one of those. Yeah. This really has worked out so well. It's really worked out so well. Nik Bonitto was taken with the last selection of the second round. And now he was third in sacks, and now he's the 10th highest paid player at his position. And you remember what George Paton said the night of the draft about Nik Bonitto.
Nik Bonitto at 64, holy
Yeah.
I heard Dover and Cecil speculating whether or not that word started with an F or an S. I think it pretty clearly started with an F.
It was
and
an
I
F.
think it was appropriate.
It was an F. Yes. Yes. Good for George Paton. I mean, this is a real feather in the cap of George Paton. And I was at my kitchen table this morning, and it's funny to hear you say that, but they were talking about the draft night. They were talking about that clip. So my head was in a similar spot, and I'm like, man, I want to see what that draft room looked like in the war room the night that they drafted Nik Bonitto. To say that George Paton was in charge is an understatement. Now, this is the Hackett year. This is the spring of 2022. So Hackett's in the war room. John Elway's still in the war room. It's just weird to see because so much has changed.
Right.
So much has changed. And really, all things considered, a short period of time. But this is Nik Bonitto getting the call from George Paton and eventually getting on the line with Hackett and what it sounded like years ago. This was the seed that got planted years ago that led us to the fruitful tree called Nik Bonitto that we have here today.
Hey, Nick.
What's up, Nick?
Nick. Hey, Nick, you there?
Hello, stop. Hello?
Nick. George Paton with the Broncos. How we doing?
Doing good.
You ready to roll?
Yes, sir.
You ready to get to work?
Yes, sir.
All right, my man. Let's get it going, okay?
Yes, sir.
Just like we talked about when you were here, all right? You got to work your ass off. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Coach Hackett. We're fired up, all right?
Yes, sir.
Hey, how you living?
I'm doing good, Coach.
Hey, it seems like just yesterday you were hanging out with us, huh?
Yes, sir.
That was kind of a fun interview, huh?
Yes, sir.
Hey, man, I just say you got that passion, you fired up, and you can rush the passer. That's all that matters, right?
Yes, sir. No doubt.
Hey, let's get ready to get some crazy sacks and get our celebration dances going, right?
Yes, sir.
How's everybody doing there? They're all fired up?
They about to go crazy after this.
That's awesome. Well, welcome to Broncos, baby.
Pretty cool. One, you hear the goofball that is Hackett.
Oh my gosh, the drop off in.
Let's get ready for some sack dances. Literally.
You just get out there and do it, man. It's gonna be awesome, man.
Literally. Let's get those sack dances.
My shoulders like sank. I
Oh
was
my
like George Paton.
gosh.
I'm like, okay, yeah, he speaks with such confidence and clarity, and it's just a guy that clearly is in command and knows what he's doing. And then Hackett's like, sup, dude.
Well, it's cool to hear on multiple levels, all right? Because you hear him weeping. You hear Nik Bonitto weeping. His dream literally came true. In the video, he does a double take at his phone. He's like this could be it. This could be it. And he can barely hold conversation because of the tears that he's fighting back. And I just love that. Because at the end of the day, he's a human being. Right? We know the football player. We don't know Nik Bonitto, the human being, that well. So that was cool to hear. And you go back and watch it. George Paton was running point guard that night in the draft. And not that he's going to hit on every pick because his next pick was Dulcich, right? But a feather in the cap for George Paton. This is, I don't know if it's at the top of his resume, but it's in the top half of the paper.
It's not at the top of his resume, and I think that pick is probably pretty obvious. But, you use the analogy feather in the cap. I almost think that the receptacle needs to be bigger. We need to start talking about arrows in the quiver or drops in the bucket or something. Because if you look at George Paton's paper that you just referenced, right, and where Nik Bonitto lands on it, Patrick Surtain, Quinn Miners, Jonathan Cooper. He brought in free agents like Zach Allen. He drafted Nik Bonitto. He's found, and those are just guys who've gotten contract extensions in the last year.
Yep.
Since July of 2024. But then you figure you got a pretty promising starting opposite corner in Riley Moss in the 3rd round.
Correct.
How about an all-pro returner like Marvin Mims in the 2nd round?
Correct.
You drafted promising people who we think are going to be significant contributors like Troy Franklin and the Crystal, Jade Barron, and R.J. Harvey, and Pat Bryant.
Well, for a lot of those, it gets into the territory of like those might not be George's picks. You know what I mean? Like I think.
But if he's running point guard.
Yeah, no. On that night he was.
Mm-hmm. But you
he
think
is
that
literally George is standing up in the draft room. Everyone else is sitting down, and he's literally pointing to people like, "What do you think about this? Okay, analytics. Put our big board like." And I think now it's just more of a neutered is going to be the wrong phrase, but it's just more of like you're riding shotgun. You don't have your hands on 10 and 2 anymore. And so like when you first started that list, like yeah, those are all George picks, but